What's up, everyone? So I'm here at my Week 5 NFL DraftKings picks. Hope all of you guys had a very profitable Week 4. Taking a quick look at the picks that I gave out in my Week 4 video. It wasn't too bad. I had some bad picks, but I definitely had some good picks. So hopefully you guys are able to capitalize on some of the good guys that I gave out. We're able to cash in some contests. Cam Newton and Cooper and guys like that really let me down in some of the big tournaments. But, I really wasn't on them too much. And luckily, all the bad picks that I have right here, I wasn't on them at all in cash games except for Marvin Jones. And Marvin Jones, although he played poor at 12.4 points, it wasn't a total bust. So if you want a more in-depth recap video, you can take a look at the video that I uploaded on Tuesday. There'll be a link in the top right, or you can find the link in the description as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and move into Week 5 picks. Okay, so moving on to a few stacks that I like as always. The first one that I like a lot is Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson. Now, they are far from cheap at $7,700 for Rodgers and $7,900 for Nelson, but it's a great spot for them. Not only are they playing in prime time, which Aaron Rodgers always seems to show up for, they're coming off a bye week, which is always big, especially for the Packers. Since they were so beat up, it's going to give them more time to prepare for this game, heal up, rest up, whatever you need to do. It's an early season bye week. Not a lot of teams like that, but, you still have to take advantage of it when you have it. A couple other things that I want to mention here is Aaron Rodgers is coming off a 4-touchdown game in week 3, and his price did not change at all. So that's always huge. And the reason that, a lot of people haven't been on Jordy Nelson is because he's still trying to recover from, the injury, that severe injury he faced last season. That said, he's caught a touchdown pass in every single game this season so far. And, the reason it's so obvious to pair these two guys together is because 64.1% of the time Aaron Rodgers drops back to pass, he's throwing it to a wide receiver. That's the 4th highest percent in the NFL among quarterbacks. So anytime Rodgers is dropping back to pass, he's likely throwing it to a wide receiver. So likely those two guys he's going to be throwing it to are going to be Randall Cobb and or Jordy Nelson, of course. So it makes sense to stack all three of these guys if you want to do that. That may be something I'll do in the primetime slate. Outside of the primetime slate, I'm probably not going to do that, and I may not even do it in the primetime slate. I'm not really sure yet. I haven't dived too deep into that slate yet, but I like pairing these two guys together a lot. And, something else I want to mention is Aaron Rodgers is averaging over 25 DraftKings points per game at home. This is obviously a home game. It's a primetime game. Rodgers hasn't thrown for over 300 yards in a while. He's facing off against a Giants team who did not look good at all on Monday Night Football. So it's kind of a short week for the Giants. It's not like it's a short Thursday week or something like that, but a slight short week for the Giants. But again, it kind of makes up for it since they get to play, on primetime again, and it's the late Sunday game. So it's not going to hurt them too much there. I'm not really worried about the Giants being tired or anything like that. I really like this spot for Rodgers and Nelson. Okay, so the next stack that I like is Derek Carr and Amari Cooper. Now, this is a significantly cheaper stack compared to Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson, but I think it's going to be every bit as popular for more than one reason. So first off, Amari Cooper has struggled so far this season. I had him last week. He ended up not doing much. Now his price has finally come down. He's dropped to $7,200. And Michael Crabtree, on the other hand, has been playing so well. His price has come up a pretty penny. So, they're almost the same price now. I believe Crabtree is $6,900 compared to Cooper's $7,200. So don't quote me on that. But, Cooper's price dropped $400 this week, so that's something to keep an eye on. Usually when a player of Cooper's caliber drops that significantly in price, his ownership will go up. Plus, he has a great matchup in this particular game. Now, another interesting thing that I want to mention is Jason Verrett, clearly the San Diego Chargers' best secondary player, may have a torn ligament in his knee. If he's not able to play or, is going to be limited or whatever the case is, if Jason Verrett is even slightly injured, I'm going to be all over almost any Raider in this game that I can get my hands on. I'm going to be triple stacking, Crabtree, Cooper, and Carr as much as I can probably. That's something that I was going to do regardless. And even if Verrett is able to go, I like playing Crabtree and Cooper together no matter what. This game actually has the highest Vegas total at 50.5. So a really high total. Obviously, Vegas is expecting a lot of points in this game. Hopefully, majority of them come on the Raiders side of the ball. because that's who I like a lot this week. San Diego is allowing almost 300 passing yards per game. Now, the Raiders are at home, which you would think would be a good thing, but so far this season they've actually struggled at home, so we'll have to see what that leads to. But right now, I think this is a great spot. I like Cooper a little bit more than Crabtree as we speak, but I'm going to be playing all three of them quite a bit. But if I had to pick between Crabtree and Cooper this week, I'm going at Cooper because they're similarly priced. I think Cooper is the better receiver, and I think everybody's going to have their eyes on Crabtree now because Crabtree's been playing so much better than Cooper. So I like this stack a lot, and I really don't think you can go wrong with who you pair Carr with at all. So, hopefully you guys can get some of these people in your lineup, and hopefully it works out. Okay, so the next stack that I have down here is Tom Brady and Julian Edelman. Now, this is interesting to me because, we all know Tom Brady, it's his first game back. We're all interested. We all are probably going to have some form of a piece of this game on the Patriots side. Maybe some guys will go with Pryor or maybe even Crowell or something like that on the Browns side, but I don't think I'm going to be doing any of that. But, this is an interesting game for Brady. Obviously, like I said, coming off the suspension, he's not priced, super, super high. We've seen Brady well over 8,000 before, so at 7,500, we're getting him at somewhat of a discount. We know he's as healthy as he can possibly be, as healthy as he'll be all season for sure. And, I don't have any stats that I really want to throw at you. It's more so just, the narrative of the situation, I guess. The big thing I want to point out here is that if the Patriots start winning this game and it's going to be a blowout, Bill Belichick loves to run up the score, especially in a situation like this to kind of stick it to the NFL. The reason I like Edelman a little bit more than some of the other guys is because, I've heard Gronk is still dealing with some hamstring issues. I heard that even if he plays this coming weekend, he'll be on a snap count. If that's true, I definitely want Edelman more. Now, I may sprinkle in some Martellus Bennett. I'm not sure I'm, all in on that. I'm really, another player that I'm actually really curious about is James White. Now that Tom Brady's going to be back, James White has really intrigued me because he's done absolutely nothing this season, and this game actually appears to be a pretty good spot for him. So, and if the Patriots do get up big and they start running the score up, they're obviously probably not going to be running the ball too much. Garrett Blount's not a guy I'm too interested in, I don't think, but James White has really intrigued me because he has that huge PPR bonus, and if I get somewhere down the road and I spend up at a ton of positions and I want to go super cheap, James White very well may be a guy I'm going to slot in, but right now a Tom Brady, Julian Edelman stack sounds the best to me. Okay, so moving on to running backs now. The first guy I want to talk about is a pretty obvious play this week, just like he was last week, and that's Jordan Howard. At $5,200, his price has come up significantly from the $3,700 price tag that he was last week, but for what you can possibly get out of him, he is still a really good value. And the real big thing I want to talk about is he's going up against the Indianapolis Colts, who struggle immensely against receiving running backs. They got lit up by Theo Riddick in week 1. I think it was. It might have been week 2. But anyway, and they're 4th worst in the NFL when it comes to stopping opposing running backs from scoring fantasy points. Right now they're allowing 33.8 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. That is just awful. The Bears are back at home, and Howard's still a good price tag. That's really all I need to know to really convince myself to play Howard again. He's going to be a guy I'm going to consider in cash games. I'll look elsewhere for maybe a little bit more value at some other spots so I can maybe pay up for another running back or something like that. But Howard is a guy that I feel good about. He's coming off a good game with almost 5 yards per carry. Didn't get as involved into the pass game as I thought he was going to, but this is definitely a spot where he's going to get some more looks in the passing game. So that's why I like Jordan Howard a lot this week. Okay, so the next guy that I want to talk about is Theo Riddick. Now, this is an interesting spot for Riddick because, Dwayne Washington has now gone down as well. So that's 2 running backs who are the main, ball carrier for the Lions that have gone down now in Amir Abdullah and Dwayne Washington. It doesn't look like he's going to play this coming week against the Philadelphia Eagles for the Lions. So it looks like Theo Riddick can get an increased workload again. Now, Theo Riddick has actually had double-digit carries for the first time in his for the first time in the last 16 games, which is actually pretty surprising to me. I thought he would have had done it at least a couple times, and not to mention he's a legitimate threat to have double-digit targets each and every week. So if you have somebody out there who has a chance to get double-digit rushes and double-digit targets, it's pretty much a no-brainer to me. Now, it's not the best matchup in the world. I mean, the Eagles have been very, very good against the run. They've been good against just stopping teams in general. They've been very, very, solid on both sides of the ball. The workload increase is going to be so good. Now, a lot of people are thinking that the preseason stud of Zinner, I believe is his last name, is going to get an increased workload. I don't know about that. I really haven't heard too much on it. So Theoretic is not going to be a guy I'm going to have a ton of. Right now he has the most receptions and the most targets of any other running back in the NFL. He has 20 receptions and 26 targets. It's only 6 incompletions thrown his way. I mean, that's pretty big. If this game goes the way it's expected to, it's very, very likely that the Lions are going to be down and are going to have to throw the ball quite a bit anyway. And if that's the case, Theoretic's value goes even higher. Obviously, I don't mind him getting a few carries, and if he can potentially get a rushing touchdown, that'd be great. I mean, he only has 1 rushing touchdown in the last 16 games, and he doesn't even get a ton of receiving touchdowns. But the thing you're really looking for is just a lot of PPR bonus. And, he's getting, plenty of targets so far this season. He's had at least 5 targets in every single game this season. He's had at least 4 receptions in every single game this season. So he has some use in the receiving game. His price is just now starting to come back down. His price is still a little bit too high for my liking at $4,900, but I still think that this could be a good spot for him. And, if Zinner, doesn't practice well this week, Theoretic potentially could get all the carries, maybe even in the red zone, which is a scary thought. I doubt that, but we'll have to see what happens. So I like Theoretic. I'm going to monitor the situation throughout the week. If something pops up, and maybe we hear Zinner is going to split carries with him or something like that, I may, back off because it's not the best matchup in the world, like I mentioned. But right now, Theoretic has really intrigued me, and I'm going to be taking a look at him on Sunday if nothing should change. So the third and final running back that I want to talk about is DeMarco Murray, and he's having a great fantasy season. Now, he's not playing on the best of teams, but it actually helps us a lot in fantasy value because he's going to have the ball so much. And right now, some of these numbers he's putting up are pretty ridiculous. I mean, averaging at least 20 DraftKings points per game right now. He's 5th in rushing with 340 yards. He's tied for 2nd in running back receptions right now, just behind Theoretic, like I just mentioned. And he actually has the most receiving touchdowns of any running back right now. That's 2 receiving touchdowns. Both of those came in week 1 against, wait for it, the Minnesota Vikings, who are the best defense in the NFL right now. So the Miami defense is not particularly great against the run. They've allowed the 5th most rushing yards at 482. So everything's pointing to a good spot. I mean, he's getting his targets. He only had 2 targets last week, but he had, 95 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns against the Texans on the road. His price is the highest it's been in quite a while. In fact, in the past 16 games, this is as high as his price has been. But I think it's just such a good play. It's kind of hard to pass up. He's projected at like 20.5 points right now. So I think DeMarco Murray is probably going to be the most common running back this week. And he's going to be a guy that I think I'm considering him in cash games. Before I never really would. And, probably now that I am considering him in cash games, he probably won't do nothing. But so far, Murray has just played great. He's getting all the carries. As far as I can tell, he had 25 carries last week, which was significantly higher than what he's had so far this season. The Titans were in that game against Houston. If it wasn't for that Will Fuller punt return touchdown, they very well could have won in overtime and had a chance to win that game. So I think he's going to be really, really popular, though. So hopefully I'm wrong on that. But even if he is, I think it's too good of a play to pass up. And so far this week, I haven't really seen a running back that I like more on the board right now. I mean, I just really don't. Okay, so moving on to some wide receivers now. The first guy that I want to talk about is the pretty obvious play of the week, and that's Antonio Brown. He is so expensive, but he is so worth it, and especially this week. He's coming off a week where he didn't meet his projected point total, which he doesn't do often, but it made sense why he didn't. I mean, he scored 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, I think, or at least the first half. They got up so big so early, and, there was really no need to waste his usefulness in that game. So, it made sense. They wanted to get Le'Veon Bell the ball a little bit more, and just, it was a culmination of different things, and it made sense. This week is a great spot for him. They're facing off against the Jets, who have allowed 797 receiving yards, which is the 5th most in the NFL. And Darrelle Revis may or may not play. Personally, I hope he does play, and the reason I do is because Revis has been terrible this year. Has been lit up by multiple guys, and Antonio Brown very well could be the next guy on the list. Darrelle Revis actually, Pro Football Focus is ranking Revis 102nd out of 112 eligible cornerbacks this season. That's awful. He's right there of almost being the worst cornerback in all of pro football so far this season. So, and I think this is a great spot for Antonio Brown to possibly put up 35 plus DraftKings points. We've seen Antonio Brown put up 35 plus DraftKings points in 6 of the last 16 games. That's unbelievable. So I think this is a good spot for Brown to put up another 30 plus game and maybe even flirt with that 35 plus number. But we'll see what happens. But I like Antonio Brown a lot in this game. And, I guess you can almost call it a bounce back week because 22 points per game, or 22 points last game for Antonio Brown is a bad week for him. So I like Brown a lot in this situation, and he's going to be a guy I'm going to be playing in just about every single different type of contest, cash game, big tournament, doesn't really matter. Okay, so next up I have Jarvis Landry, and I think this is a good spot for him. They're coming off that awful game against the Cincinnati Bengals and those ugly color rush creamsicle looking uniforms. So I like the spot for Landry. Landry is getting such a big workload of the Miami offense. In fact, over 20% of the team's offensive workload is going in the direction of Jarvis Landry, which is huge. And in every single game this season, Jarvis Landry has had at least 10 targets and at least 7 receptions. So everything is pointing in the direction of Landry, getting back on the horse right here and putting up another good game. Before that Bengals game, he had posted 25 fantasy points against the Patriots, 29 against the Browns. So, he's had 2, kind of subpar games this season, and he's had 2 really, really good games this season. So I think this is a good spot against the Titans for him to put up some points and have a good day. He's even second in the NFL in receptions right now with 31. Only A.J. Green has more, and he only has 1 more reception at 32. So I like Jarvis Landry a lot. They're coming off a long week. Since they had a couple extra days to prepare for this game, since they faced off against the Bengals on a Thursday night game, like I mentioned before. So all that said, that's why I like Landry a lot this week. Okay, so finishing up the wide receiver position here with Sterling Shepard. It was a guy I mentioned briefly in the beginning of the video where I may have won the primetime slate if he had had a big play. Well, he's going to be in the primetime slate again, and I'm still interested in him. He has some really interesting stats here. He has the most touchdowns of any Giants wide receiver at this point in the season. He only has 2 of them, but still the most of any Giants wide receiver. He has 20 receptions on 26 targets, only 6 incompletions his way, which is pretty impressive. And the real thing that shocked me was he only has 2 receptions less than Odell. Odell only has 22 receptions so far this season. So although Odell Beckham has a significant higher amount of targets, Sterling Shepard has pretty much been, either one, more sure-handed, or they're running more, efficient routes for him. So I was very interested in that as well. And, last but not least, Green Bay has allowed 683 receiving yards in just 3 games, not to mention 4 receiving touchdowns as well. So, the Giants are going to be on the road. It's going to be, a hostile environment, of course, and it's going to be a primetime game. So it may be a guy that I change my mind on in the future, but right now I'm very, very interested in Sterling Shepard, and I like the price as well at $5,500. So I like Shepard this week, I think. Okay, so moving on to some tight ends and the defense I like this week. First, the tight ends. The first guy I like is Zach Ertz. I mean, this is a pretty obvious play. It's going to be really, really popular, but he's going up against the Lions, who are awful against opposing tight ends. The Lions have allowed 6 touchdowns to opposing tight ends. I think they're averaging like 1.5 touchdowns per game right now to opposing tight ends, which is just terrible. I mean, it's just dreadful. So, the 6 touchdowns they've allowed to tight ends is by far the most in the NFL. The Eagles are coming off of a bye week, which I mentioned earlier with the Packers is always a really, really big plus. And he's averaging at least 10 yards per reception in the last 10 games, so that's always interesting. And I think he's going to get a lot of red zone targets. We'll see, but so far this season, Carson Wentz has looked pretty good, and he's obviously going to want to get on the right track with his new tight end or with his main tight end. So I like this spot a lot for Ertz. I like the price at $3,500, and everything is just pointing in the right direction of this being a great fantasy play this week. Okay, so there aren't a ton of other tight ends that I really like. I think Zach Ertz is by far the best tight end play of this particular week. But another guy I do like is Jordan Reed. I mean, he's had at least 7 targets in every single game this season. He's averaging the most points per game of any tight end in the past 16 game period, a significant amount more than Rob Gronkowski. I believe Greg Olsen is the second highest. Olsen's going to be a guy I'm definitely going to be targeting on the primetime slate, but if you're not playing primetime, I like Jordan Reed a lot, and there's really not much else you can say about it. I mean, he's just a great tight end. All right, so last but not least, the last and final pick that I like this week is the Washington defense. I think this is a good spot for the Redskins D. I mean, if you take a look here, they're going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Flacco's thrown 4 interceptions already this season. You know, he's only thrown for 300 yards once. And Baltimore is averaging 1.8 giveaways per game, which is 21st worst in the NFL. Not to mention, I love the price. I think a lot of other people are going to be paying up a defense this week. So, adding all that together, and I think that Washington is a very, very solid defensive play this week. So that's going to do it for this week's picks. Thank you for tuning in. I hope all of you guys can use these picks and help you win some money. Be sure to follow me on Twitter to stay up to date, because some of these guys I told you I was a bit iffy on at the moment, but I kind of like them as we speak. I may not like them later in the week. I may decide to go in a completely different direction or something along those lines. So Twitter is going to be the best spot for me to be doing that. I'm going to do my best to give as many updates this week as I can. I like tweeting out stats there as well, from maybe some guys who I really wasn't as interested in, but I was looking up stats on them and I got intrigued. So just be sure to stay up to date there. If you don't have a Twitter, you can always just, comment down in the comment section, and I'll try to respond to them as much as and quickly as I possibly can. So, like I said, thank you for tuning into the video, and hope to see you guys in my value/sleeper plays in a couple days here. Thank you. Later.